given the current state, and obviously there's lots of contributing different countries, what's going on with demographics, people talk about a population collapse overall globally. What is your view of global population?
Before we start talking about deglobalization, so assuming that globalization continues from its height onward, we were already in the process of revising down our estimates. So it used to be 15 years ago that we thought by 2050 we were going to have 11 to 12 billion people. That number is now under 10, and as the data continues to get upgraded, we'll probably, assuming nothing goes wrong, peak at just below 9 and then start falling back gently. If I'm right about deglobalization, we're going to have a significantly sharper drop-off, and as soon as globalization hits agriculture at large, which may be in the fourth quarter of this year, population peaks.
Wow. Okay, positive stuff. Looking at the ways in which population collapse and the reduction of that could be tied in with automation, is there any technological savior that can come through and assist us with the problems that we're facing at the moment? There's always unknown unknowns when it comes to technology. I'm aware of that. But are there things that you can foresee if we get particular advancements that may alleviate some of this?
Absolutely. So pros and cons. There are a lot of technologies with automation, AI, and robotics that look really good. Now, AI, the whole idea of general AI and Skynet, we're decades away from that. So I'm going to just put that in a box. I'll let Elon Musk talk about that. AI is all about image recognition today and getting it so that machines can recognize different things and then do pre-programmed tasks. There's no real autonomy, but it's automated. That allows manufacturing to reshape, but it also requires massive economies of scale. The most expensive thing a country can do isn't industrialize, it's to automate. And it's not a one-off cost. You have to constantly update it because every time there's a change to the production line, you more or less have to start over with the programming. So it's a very expensive way to go. It does use different labor and less labor, but it's not clear to me that it really moves the needle in a huge way. And if we're breaking down global transport and intermediate goods trade, then we're losing the economies of scale that make that model work. In North America, where you've got 1/3 of global consumption, we'll probably still be doing that. But I see that broadly leaving the East Asian sphere, which combined with their bad demographics are awful. We also have the baby boomers leaving, so that we know that the capital crunch is coming. That means less money is available to do this sort of upgrading. The technologies I'm most interested in are the combination of automation and agriculture. We're very close to having facilities that you can latch onto a tractor that identify each individual plant and identify if it needs water or fertilizer or pesticide or if it's a weed or whatever, and then it gets a squirt of whatever is appropriate. So you do like 6 passes of stuff in one pass, and each plant gets individual attention. That suggests that we would be able to reduce fertilizer and pesticide use by 80% and maybe even double yields. But again, economies of scale. It only works on mega farms where you can afford the equipment cost. So if you've got giant farms in the United States or the Netherlands or Argentina or Australia, sure. Doesn't work for most of the world.
Talking about technology, I've heard that we are unbelievably reliant on getting cheap technological parts out of China, silicon chips and other such stuff. How much of an issue is it going to be if China is facing demographic collapse and then can't make anything anymore? How much is that going to have downstream effects for the rest of the world's technology?
Well, we've been a little bit lucky that the Chinese have kind of become a bag of dicks and really encouraged everyone to outsource and resource everything that they can. That's bought us a lot of time. Now, in the United States, everyone is paranoid about semiconductors, and we all see that 12% number that the U.S. now only produces 12% of global chips as a panic point. But that's by number. By value, we produce 60%. So all the good chips are designed in Japan and the United States. They might be manufactured somewhere else if they're further down the scale. But in terms of cell phones and server farms, the important stuff, that's already safe. The problem is going to be the mid and the lower end. The mid ones are usually Malaysia and Thailand. The lower ones are almost certainly China. So when you're talking about the lower tech stuff, the Internet of Things, yeah, that's just going away. But I'd argue that I don't really need a meat thermometer that is going to tell my phone what the temperature of the meat is. I mean, we can get by without that, I think. It's overall electronics manufacture that's going to be the big issue. Because remember, differentiated labor forces is what makes manufacturing work. China's a huge place. It's got a lot of that internally, and then it has access immediately to Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia. That's what's breaking down that whole ecosystem. We can't rebuild all of that. I mean, just to serve electronics needs for North America probably would require a workforce of 4 million people in manufacturing. We're already in labor shortage. And the Mexicans are kind of tapped out already. So there is going to be a huge amount of pressure. Americans do well at the really high-end manufacturing and the very low end because we're energy rich. It's the part in the middle that we're really reliant on the Mexicans to save us for.
What ways could you be wrong about all of this stuff?
You know, like I said, this is perspective. We're dealing with an environment that we've never been in before. The way I would like to be wrong is that the Americans would actually do what George Herbert Walker Bush wanted to do back in 1991 and have a conversation with ourselves about what sort of world we wanted to live in and how to get there. We weren't interested then. I would argue that we're really not interested now. So the risk here, from my point of view, is that globalization does manage to persist because of some lingering American commitment. I'm not seeing that. I'm certainly not seeing that with the Ukraine war. Yes, we're seeing NATO having a new lease on life, but the whole guns for butter deal that we made during the Cold War, none of the economic stuff is on the agenda. All the sanctions that the Trump administration enacted are still there with one exception, the Airbus case. I don't see it's very likely. And then on the demographic front, that's just math. If you want more 30-year-olds, you had to start 31 years ago.
What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full, unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe. Peace.